Marcus Hale found a lost child at the airport, and her billionaire mother changed his life. He thought he was just helping little Lila find her mom. But in seconds, that small act of kindness pulled him into Eleanor Quinn's world, a world of private jets, ruthless boardrooms, and a family under fire. Eleanor's fortune could save him, yet her company's decisions had already cost him everything. And when one rumor sparks a CPS investigation that could rip Lila away, Marcus must decide: protect his own name, or protect the only people who've ever made him feel at home. What really happened that day at Gate 23, and when the truth comes out, who will be left standing? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Late afternoon sunlight poured through the massive windows of Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, casting long shadows on the busy terminal floor. Travelers rushed past, some clutching their boarding passes, others juggling cups of coffee and luggage. Marcus Hale stood near Gate 23, his worn hands gripping a luggage cart piled high with bags. His eyes, deep set with fatigue, flicked between the cart and his phone, where he was counting tips under his breath. Each dollar sign felt like a small victory, a reminder that he was still scraping by. "Okay, that's $22. Enough for gas," he muttered quietly to himself, doing mental math. He winced at the thought of driving home to a quiet house. The stillness always seemed louder since his wife had passed away 2 years ago. He often felt like a ghost in his own life. As he turned to wheel the cart toward a quieter corner, something caught his ear, a muffled sobbing sound drifting through the cacophony of voices and announcements. Marcus paused, his heart sinking at the sound. He knew that cry. It was one he'd heard before in various forms: children lost in crowded places. With a furrowed brow and an instinct to help, Marcus pushed the cart closer to Gate 23. There, sitting alone on the floor against the wall, was a small girl no older than 6. She had bright red hair that framed her round face and large green eyes filled with tears. In her tiny hands, she clutched a toy plane as if it were her lifeline. "Hey there," Marcus said gently as he knelt down to her level. "What's wrong?" The girl looked up at him with wide eyes, confusion mixing with fear. "I can't see my mom," she cried again, her voice trembling. Marcus felt a pang of empathy surge through him. It reminded him of when he'd been separated from his mother as a child, at an amusement park, lost and scared among throngs of people. "I'm sorry you're feeling this way," he said softly. "Can you tell me your name?" "Lila," she whispered through sniffles. "Okay, Lila." Marcus smiled warmly. "I'm Marcus. I'm here to help you find your mom." He glanced around but saw only strangers rushing past them without noticing the little girl's distress. As Lila nodded slowly, her tears began to subside just a little bit as she focused on him instead of her fear. In that moment of connection, one that seemed to bridge their worlds, Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out his father's old harmonica. "Do you like music?" he asked gently. She nodded again but didn't say anything more. He brought the harmonica up to his lips and began to play Amazing Grace. The soft notes cut through the noise around them like warm sunlight breaking through clouds. Lila's expression shifted from worry to wonder as she listened intently, mesmerized by the soothing melody filling the air. As he played on, Marcus noticed how Lila began tapping her foot lightly against the ground in rhythm with the music, a sign that she was starting to relax. He felt lighter too. It was as if each note washed away some weight from his own heart. After finishing the song, Marcus smiled at her again and said softly, "See, you've got your own kind face right here." He gestured toward himself playfully before continuing more seriously. "Let's go find your mom together." Lila looked down at her toy plane, then back up at him. For just an instant, trust sparkled in her eyes, a precious thing for someone so small in such a big world. With careful patience and encouragement woven into every word, Marcus held out his hand toward Lila. She hesitated for only a heartbeat before slipping her small fingers into his calloused palm. "Can you show me where you last saw your mom?" he asked gently as they stood together. She pointed towards one of the nearby shops filled with brightly colored souvenirs and snacks, a possible place where someone might linger while waiting for flights or checking last-minute gifts off their list. Taking slow steps so she wouldn't feel overwhelmed by all movement around them, they made their way through swarms of travelers hurrying along their paths, each lost in their own stories but unaware of this little girl who needed help finding hers. When they reached security's entrance not far from Gate 23's departure board decorated with numbers flipping every minute, showing flight after flight departing, it became clear how daunting it must feel for someone so small amongst all these rushing bodies above all else surrounding them. "Now! I can't see my mom," Lila exclaimed once more anxiously, looking back at him, despair creeping back into those big green eyes once more tightening within him anew. "You're going to see her soon," Marcus reassured, while giving Lila's hand a gentle squeeze, hoping she'd feel safer knowing they were almost there now. The weight pressing down inside him intensified. This wasn't just about finding her mother anymore, it was about making sure she knew everything would be all right, no matter what lay ahead. Just before reaching security's desk, located off one side beneath fluorescent lights flickering overhead, they could almost see glimpses reflecting off walls painted beige, colored by years passing without fresh coats. The little girl leaned closer again, whispering softly. Mom said, "Find a kind face." Marcus stopped mid-stride, hearing those words catch him off guard completely. The trust lacing each syllable weighed heavily upon him. He felt something tighten painfully within himself, the awareness dawning upon him now felt larger than anything else. He knelt back down until they were eye to eye again, holding onto each other tightly. How had this moment happened? It struck deep within, stirring emotions, long buried beneath layers held tight against any vulnerability or fear, since losing everything close once. But here they were, standing together, a stranger guiding another human being, lost amid chaos, with nothing but kindness, binding them both through such uncertainty ahead. "No worries here," he promised, even though uncertainty loomed thick around them both. This child needed reassurance more than anything else right now. As they approached airport security, the bustling world behind fading slightly into background noise muffled. Now compared outside, buzz beyond words. Spoken before meeting, chaos surrounding lives. Swirling all around, nearby Marcus took in everything carefully. Assessing guards stationed near security desks, glancing briefly towards them occasionally, it dawned quickly how daunting it must feel, waiting unsure if anyone would listen, let alone pay attention. And yet together, holding hands closely, standing strong, they could navigate anything lying ahead, full circle, closing gaps between isolation, lurking outside, causing harm, looming everywhere, underneath brighter days yet unseen approaching. Faster than anyone could anticipate, realizing moments past. When they finally arrived at security's desk, Marcus cleared throat nervously, looking over toward staff member, watching intently, readying themselves when noticing visitors approaching slowly. "Excuse me," called out officer, appearing slightly frazzled amidst chaos unfolding all around. "This little lady is lost," Marcus explained calmly, keeping tone steady despite nerves rising deep inside, wanting desperately for reassurance. Back echoed moments shared prior, while ensuring Lila remained comforted, holding on to hope tucked safely close. "Where is your mother?" asked officer, raising eyebrow, glancing toward direction pointed earlier by girl still clutching tightly onto toy plane, looking vulnerable, facing new reality ahead, navigating unknown territories beyond familiarity, lying waiting still. Outside closed doors somewhere hidden beyond view. She said, "Find a kind face." Lila answered, simply catching everyone off guard, surprising even herself, perhaps realizing strength woven throughout, shared trust, connecting paths crossed, suddenly shifting perspectives present only moments ago, uniting hearts alongside open minds willing extend grace. Beyond walls, separating strangers formed over time, fostering new relationships, beginning anew, building bridges yet unseen, reaching places traveled seldomly before today, unfolding stories awaited patiently. Eager anticipation, a spark ignited within. Feeling relief, sweeping over all gathered close, brought light, shining brightly against heavy burdens pressing down, while reminding everyone gathered around ground level, helping uphold others during trials faced every day, adding weight, needlessly straining those longing, deeply love, seeking solace, refuge from uncertainty, standing together, facing future unknowns, brave, steadfast, ready confront whatever comes next without hesitation, carrying forward newfound hope, rekindled, hearts connected, shared experiences, bonding souls created against odds, stacked high, stacked growing, higher determined step forward, navigating waters uncharted, arriving peacefully shores meant discover things previously imagined. And so, started journey anew, building brighter tomorrows. Learning lessons gained, striving harder, understanding, purpose, driving choices shaped deeper connections, formed while reaching milestones unforeseen, paving ways promising futures existed. Beyond expectations currently alive, resonating vibrantly, echoing throughout lives touched, transforming perceptions eternally forged. Marcus sat with Lila at the security desk, her small hand still holding on to his. The intercom crackled overhead as security announced, "Would Eleanor Quinn please come to Gate 23 security desk? Your daughter Lila is waiting for you." The words echoed through the terminal, bouncing off the high ceilings and mixing with the constant hum of travelers rushing past. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a slightly squashed granola bar he'd been saving for his late shift. "Are you hungry?" he asked, carefully unwrapping it. "It's got chocolate chips." Lila nodded, accepting half of the granola bar with both hands. As she nibbled on it, she pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket and smoothed it out on her lap. The crayon drawing showed a big doorway with Gate 23 written above it in wobbly letters. Underneath, in bold red crayon, she had written, "Safe." "That's a nice drawing," Marcus said softly. "Did you make it while you were waiting?" "I make lots of maps," Lila explained between bites. "This is where you found me. It's safe here." Before Marcus could respond, a commotion erupted near the security checkpoint. A woman burst through, her designer flats slapping against the tile floor as she ran. Her dark hair was coming loose from its ponytail, and her face was flushed with worry. She wore simple jeans and a sweater, not what Marcus expected from an airport reunion. "Lila," she called out, voice breaking. "Oh, baby." "Mommy!" Lila jumped up, dropping the remainder of her granola bar as she ran toward her mother. Eleanor Quinn dropped to her knees, not caring about the hard floor or watching eyes, and wrapped her arms around her daughter. She pressed her face into Lila's hair, shoulders shaking with relief. "I was so scared," she whispered. "So scared." Marcus stood quietly, watching the reunion unfold. Around them, phones appeared as passengers captured the moment. Camera flashes sparkled like stars in the fluorescent-lit terminal. After a long moment, Eleanor looked up, her eyes wet with tears. She kept one arm around Lila while extending her other hand to Marcus. "Thank you," she said, voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for staying with her." Marcus shook her hand, noting her firm grip despite her trembling fingers. "Anyone would have done the same, ma'am." "No," Eleanor said, shaking her head. "Not everyone would have. Please, let me compensate you for your time and kindness." She reached for her purse. Marcus held up his hand. "That's not necessary." He hesitated, then added, "Though, if you're offering help, I've been looking for steady work, something with dignity, you know. If you hear of anything." Eleanor's expression softened. She pulled a business card from her purse and handed it to him. "Call my office tomorrow. We'll set something up." Lila tugged at her mother's sleeve, holding up her drawing. "Look, Mommy, this is where the nice man found me. He played music too." Eleanor smiled at the crayon map, then back at Marcus. "Music?" "Amazing Grace on the harmonica," he explained. "Sometimes a familiar tune helps calm the nerves." Eleanor nodded, gathering Lila's belongings. "Thank you again, Mr. Hale," he supplied. Marcus Hale. After they said their goodbyes, Marcus watched them walk away, Lila's small hand clasped tightly in her mother's. He waited until they disappeared around the corner before heading toward the employee parking lot. Under a flickering light in the garage, Marcus pulled out the business card. His heart stuttered as he read the name. Eleanor Quinn, CEO, Quinn Tech Logistics Solutions. The same company whose new contracts had replaced his old employer last year, leading to layoffs across the facility. The job he'd held for 3 years, gone in an afternoon. He stood there, card in hand, remembering the day he'd received his termination notice. Now, the CEO herself had just handed him a direct line to her office. The irony wasn't lost on him, but neither was the opportunity. Marcus sat at his worn kitchen table, spreading butter on wheat toast while morning sunlight filtered through the faded curtains. The local news played on his small TV, providing background noise as he planned his day. He needed to pick up a few airport shifts to make up for yesterday's early departure. The news anchor's voice suddenly caught his attention. "And now for a heartwarming story that's capturing hearts across Atlanta." The screen filled with shaky phone footage of yesterday's reunion at Gate 23. Marcus watched himself kneeling beside Leela. Then the emotional moment when Eleanor rushed to embrace her daughter. Below the video, bold text scrolled. "Struggling dad found lost child at airport. Her billionaire mother changed his life." Marcus nearly choked on his toast. "Billionaire," he muttered, staring at the screen as the anchor continued. Eleanor Quinn, CEO of Quinn Tech Logistics Solutions and one of Atlanta's most successful entrepreneurs, was reunited with her 6-year-old daughter yesterday thanks to the kindness of local porter Marcus Hale. His phone buzzed on the table, then buzzed again and again. Messages started pouring in, old army buddies, former co-workers, even his sister in Detroit. The local news segment had gone viral overnight. "Just saw you on the news, brother." Read a text from his friend James. "Marcus, call me. The whole church is talking about this," came a message from Pastor Ruth. He set the phone down, overwhelmed by the attention. The morning news segment played on, showing more clips from the airport. In the footage, he looked calmer than he remembered feeling, his movements steady and gentle as he helped Lila. The phone rang, displaying an unknown number. Marcus hesitated before answering. "Mr. Hale? This is Sarah Chin, Ms. Quinn's executive assistant. Ms. Quinn would like to meet with you this afternoon to discuss potential opportunities. Would 2 p.m. at the Daily Grind coffee shop on Peachtree work for you?" Marcus glanced at his schedule book, empty except for a tentative airport shift. "Yes, ma'am. I can make that work." The Daily Grind was busier than Marcus expected for a weekday afternoon. He chose a quiet corner table, smoothing his freshly pressed shirt. He'd polished his old dress shoes too. Small details his father had taught him mattered. Eleanor Quinn arrived precisely at 2 p.m., wearing a tailored blazer over a simple blouse. She looked more like the CEO he'd expected yesterday, though her warm smile remained the same. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Hale," she said, sliding into the chair across from him. "I hope you don't mind, but I ordered us both coffee." "Marcus, please," he said, "and thank you." A barista brought their drinks, a plain black coffee for him and what looked like a latte for Eleanor. They sat in awkward silence for a moment, both aware of fellow customers trying to sneak photos with their phones. "I imagine you've seen the news," Eleanor began, wrapping her hands around her cup. "Hard to miss," Marcus replied with a slight smile. "Though they got some details wrong. I'm not actually a dad. The media tends to write their own story sometimes," Eleanor said, then leaned forward. "But I'm more interested in your story, Marcus. You mentioned looking for steady work?" "Yes, ma'am. I've been picking up shifts at the airport, driving rideshare when I can, but I'm hoping to find something more stable." He paused, then added quietly, "Actually, I had stable work until last year. At Robertson Shipping and Storage." Eleanor's expression shifted. "Robertson? They were one of our—" Her voice trailed off as understanding dawned. "One of the companies affected when Quintech changed contractors," Marcus finished. "Lost my job of 3 years in that restructuring." The tension between them thickened. Eleanor set down her cup, her fingers tightening around it. "I didn't know," she said softly. "Those decisions happen at the operational level. I never saw the individual impacts." "Most CEOs don't," Marcus said, not unkindly. "But the individuals feel it." Eleanor met his gaze directly. "You still helped, Lila, even knowing who I was, what my company had cost you." "Your daughter needed help," Marcus said simply. "That's all that mattered in the moment." Eleanor nodded, something in her expression softening. They spent the next half hour discussing his background, his military service, his mechanical skills, his experience with logistics before Robertson's closure. As they finished their coffee, Eleanor's phone buzzed. Her face tightened as she read the message. "I need to make a call," she said, stepping outside. Marcus waited, watching through the window as Eleanor paced on the sidewalk, her free hand gesturing as she spoke. When she returned, her earlier warmth had been replaced with worry. "Marcus," she said, her voice tense, "I need to ask you something else." She sat down heavily. "Child Protective Services just called. They're opening a preliminary review of my parenting." Marcus straightened in his chair. "What? Why?" "The viral story has sparked online speculation about how Lila ended up alone at the airport. People are questioning my fitness as a mother." She pressed her fingers to her temples. "They're not wrong that I need better systems in place. My nanny had a family emergency, backup plans failed, and Lila got separated from my assistant during the chaos." She took a deep breath. "I have a proposition for you. Would you consider a short-term position as Lila's driver and schedule coordinator? You already have her trust, which is rare. She needs a steady presence while I deal with this scrutiny, someone who can help maintain her routine and keep her safe." Marcus pulled up to the wrought iron gates of Eleanor Quinn's home just as the sun was climbing over Atlanta's eastern horizon. The security guard checked his newly issued ID badge, then waved him through with a nod. The long driveway wound past manicured gardens to a stunning 3-story house that made Marcus's small rental feel like a dollhouse in comparison. Before he could reach for his seatbelt, the front door burst open. Lila bounded out in her Navy school uniform, her backpack bouncing with each step. A silver harmonica-shaped keychain dangled from the zipper, catching the morning light. "Mr. Marcus, look what Mom got me!" Lila held up the keychain, beaming. "It's just like yours." Eleanor appeared in the doorway, briefcase in hand, looking polished in a charcoal suit. "Lila, sweetheart, let Mr. Hale at least get out of the car first." Marcus stepped out, straightening his pressed white shirt. "Good morning, Miss Quinn." "Good morning, Miss Lila." "The school knows you're authorized for pickup and drop-off," Eleanor said, handing him a folder. "Here's her schedule, emergency contacts, and allergy information. The lunchbox is in her backpack." Lila tugged at Marcus's sleeve. "Can we show him my new map, Mom?" "After school, honey. You don't want to be late on Mr. Marcus's first day." The drive to Westbrook Academy took them through Atlanta's wealthiest neighborhoods. Lila chatted from the back seat about her upcoming science project on butterflies. At a red light, Marcus caught her making flying motions with her hands, lost in her own world. The school's circular driveway was packed with luxury SUVs and sleek sedans. Marcus guided the car Eleanor had provided, a modest but clean Toyota, into the drop-off line. As they approached the entrance, he noticed how the greeting teacher's smile tightened when she saw him. "Good morning," he said pleasantly, helping Lila with her backpack. "I'm Marcus Hale, Lila Quinn's new driver." The teacher's eyes darted to his ID badge, then to Lila. "Yes, we were," informed. Do you have the authorization paperwork? Marcus produced the folder, maintaining his calm smile as she scrutinized every page. Other cars moved smoothly through the line while she double-checked his ID against the documents. Everything seems to be in order, she finally said, her tone suggesting surprise. Lila hugged Marcus's leg before skipping toward her classroom. Bye, Mr. Marcus. Don't forget about my map. After drop-off, Marcus ran errands from Eleanor's list, picking up Lila's asthma prescription, dropping off dry cleaning, collecting art supplies for the science project. At the upscale pharmacy, the clerk called a manager to verify the prescription, despite Marcus having all the proper documentation. At the art supply store, a saleswoman followed him through the aisles, straightening items he hadn't touched. By afternoon pickup, Marcus had developed a deeper understanding of Eleanor's world and the additional challenges his presence might create. When Lila emerged from school, clutching a rolled-up paper, her excitement washed away the day's frustrations. I finished it, she announced, climbing into the back seat. Can we show Mom when she gets home? Back at the house, Lila spread her latest map across the kitchen table. Like her previous drawings, it showed places marked safe in careful child's printing. The airport's Gate 23 featured prominently, with Marcus's name written beside it in purple crayon. She'd added her school, her house, and the church where Marcus sometimes volunteered. Eleanor arrived home early, her heels clicking on the marble floor. There's my artist, she said, kissing Lila's head. Is this your new map? See, I put Mr. Marcus here because that's where we met, and here because that's where he plays music at church, and here because now he drives me to school. Lila's finger traced each location. Eleanor caught Marcus's eye over their daughter's head. Something shifted in her expression, recognition perhaps of how quickly Lila had woven him into her world of safe spaces. Later, after Lila started her homework, Eleanor invited Marcus into her home office. I've been thinking about our conversation at the coffee shop, she said, gesturing to a chair, about seeing the individual impacts of corporate decisions. Marcus sat, noting how the evening light softened the room's formal decor. What if we could help airport workers create something for single parents working irregular shifts? Eleanor rolled her chair to a whiteboard. Childcare, job placement, maybe counseling services? Near Gate 23? Marcus suggested quietly. Eleanor's marker paused. Yes, exactly there. She began sketching boxes and arrows. We could partner with community organizations, churches. Pastor Ruth, my late wife's mentor, she works with several churches that might be interested. They spent an hour outlining possibilities. Eleanor's business acumen blending with Marcus's ground-level understanding of needs. The idea grew larger, more concrete with each addition. As darkness fell, Marcus gathered his things to leave. Eleanor walked him to the door, where Lila was waiting in her pajamas. Good night, Mr. Marcus, she said, hugging him. See you tomorrow? Bright and early, he promised. Eleanor stood in the doorway, watching him walk to his car. The day's events hung between them, the subtle prejudices he'd faced. Lila's map marking him as safe, their shared vision for helping others. Marcus could sense her weighing these things against the CPS review looming over her. Thank you, she said simply, for everything today. Marcus nodded, understanding all she wasn't saying. As he drove away, he caught a final glimpse of them in his rearview mirror, mother and daughter, framed in the warm light of their doorway, waving goodbye. Marcus watched Lila's face light up as she studied the ice cream flavors through the glass case. After school, they had stopped at Sweet Pete's, a small parlor near the airport where Marcus used to take his coffee breaks during his old job. Can I have the rainbow one? Lila asked, pressing her finger against the glass. Superman flavor, Marcus explained. My nephew used to love that one too. The teenage server smiled as she scooped the bright blue, red, and yellow ice cream into a waffle cone. Marcus ordered a simple vanilla for himself, remembering Eleanor's note about Lila's sugar intake. They sat at a small table near the window, watching planes take off in the distance. Lila licked her ice cream carefully, making sure not to drip any on her uniform. "Mr. Marcus," she said between bites, "can we go see where the safe started?" He knew exactly what she meant. "Gate 23? We'd have to ask your mom first." "I already did. She said it's okay if you take me." Lila pulled out her phone, a basic model for emergencies only, and showed him Eleanor's text message giving permission. 20 minutes later, they walked through the airport's sliding doors. The terminal buzzed with its usual energy, rolling suitcases, hurried footsteps, announcements echoing overhead. Lila held Marcus's hand tightly as they made their way to Gate 23. The gate area was quieter now than the day they'd met. A few travelers dozed in the blue seats, waiting for delayed flights. Lila led Marcus to the exact spot where he'd found her. "I was sitting right here," she said, pointing to a corner seat. "And you played your song right there." Marcus touched the harmonica in his pocket. "Would you like to hear it again?" Lila nodded eagerly, settling into the chair. Marcus sat beside her and took out the old instrument, its brass surface worn smooth from years of handling. The familiar notes of Amazing Grace floated softly through the gate area. A few travelers looked up, smiling. When he finished, Lila clapped quietly. "How did you learn to play so pretty?" Marcus turned the harmonica over in his hands. "My father taught me. When things got hard, like after my wife passed away, playing helped me feel better. Sometimes I'd come to the airport at night when I couldn't sleep, just to play and pray." "You pray here?" "Everywhere, really, but especially here. Airports are funny places, full of goodbyes and hellos, tears and hugs, lots of people needing a little extra help from above." Lila considered this, drawing patterns on the armrest with her finger. "Is that why you helped me? Because you were praying?" "I helped you because it was right," Marcus said gently. "But yes, I said a little prayer when I saw you sitting alone, asked for guidance to do the right thing." "Mom's coming," Lila announced suddenly, waving at someone behind Marcus. Eleanor approached, still in her business suit but with her heels switched for flats. "I thought I might find you two here." She sat across from them, setting her briefcase aside. "Lila texted that you were visiting where the safe started." "Mr. Marcus was telling me about praying and playing music," Lila explained. Eleanor's expression softened. "This place seems to keep drawing us back." "Maybe because it's meant to," Marcus said carefully. "Ms. Quinn, remember our conversation about helping airport workers and single parents?" She nodded, leaning forward slightly. "What if we did it right here? Not exactly at Gate 23, but nearby. A center for childcare, job training, support services. A safe place for people working irregular hours, veterans transitioning to civilian jobs, single parents trying to make it work." "The Gate 23 Center," Eleanor mused, looking around the terminal. "We could renovate one of the older buildings on the perimeter. The airport authority might even support it. Good PR, community service. Pastor Ruth already works with several churches that could help," Marcus added. "She has experience coordinating volunteers, running programs." "I just got off a call with our community relations team," Eleanor said. "They're looking for meaningful initiatives to support, something beyond the usual corporate philanthropy." "I could draw the maps," Lila interjected, "to show people where everything is." Eleanor laughed softly. "Yes, honey, you could be our official map artist." A voice over the intercom announced the arrival of a delayed flight. Passengers stirred, gathering their belongings. Through the wide windows, the sun was setting, painting the sky in deep oranges and purples. "Let me make some calls tomorrow," Eleanor said, standing. "Pastor Ruth's experience would be invaluable. Maybe we could all meet this weekend to discuss it properly." Marcus nodded, helping Lila collect her backpack. They walked together through the terminal, their footsteps joining the airport's endless rhythm. Above them, the ceiling lights glowed like stars in the growing dusk, illuminating their path toward the exit. Lila skipped between them, humming Amazing Grace. Around them, the airport continued its eternal dance of arrivals and departures, but here at Gate 23, something new was taking root, something that felt a lot like hope. The terminal lights cast long shadows as they made their way out, the glass doors sliding open to welcome them into the evening air. Behind them, Gate 23 stood quiet, waiting for tomorrow's travelers and whatever grace they might need. The Monday morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Eleanor Quinn's corporate boardroom. Marcus adjusted his tie, borrowed from his church's donation closet, and tried not to feel overwhelmed by the pristine glass table and leather chairs. Eleanor sat at the head of the table, reviewing documents. "The team should be here any minute," she said, glancing up with an encouraging smile. Right on cue, executives in designer suits filed in, carrying tablets and coffee cups. Last to enter was Tobias Kern, Eleanor's COO, his silver hair perfectly styled and his smile carefully measured. "Good morning, everyone," Eleanor began. "I've called this meeting to discuss an exciting community initiative. Marcus Hale has a proposal that aligns perfectly with our corporate responsibility goals." Marcus stood, spreading out his hand-drawn sketches on the table. "Thank you, Ms. Quinn." He took a deep breath, remembering Pastor Ruth's advice to speak from the heart. The Gate 23 Center would serve airport workers, veterans, and single parents who need support. "We're proposing childcare services, job training, and community resources in one of the airport's perimeter buildings." He explained the details, the partnership possibilities with local churches, the veteran support programs, the flexible hours designed around airport shifts. As he spoke, he saw several board members nodding with interest. "The location makes perfect sense," one executive commented. "We've been looking to expand our community presence near the airport." Tobias cleared his throat. "While the concept is admirable, we need to consider the risks." He tapped his tablet. "Any major initiative requires thorough vetting of all involved parties." Marcus has already provided his background information, Eleanor interjected. "Yes, but have we fully investigated his history?" Tobias's smile remained fixed. "For instance, there's the matter of an arrest record." The room grew quiet. Marcus felt his chest tighten, but kept his voice steady. 10 years ago, I participated in a peaceful protest for veterans' health care. The charges were dismissed. Nevertheless," Tobias continued, "associating with controversial figures could jeopardize our federal contracts. Perhaps we should explore other community partners." Eleanor's eyes flashed. "Marcus Hale is the reason this initiative exists. His character isn't in question. I've trusted him with my daughter's safety for weeks now." "Which raises another concern," Tobias said smoothly. "The optics of his current role." "The optics?" Eleanor stood, her voice sharp. "The optics are exactly why we need this center. How many qualified people get passed over because of optics, Mr. Kern?" After the meeting, Marcus found himself in a small conference room with Pastor Ruth, spreading their materials across a fresh whiteboard. Ruth had brought stacks of notes from similar programs she'd helped establish. "Don't let Tobias rattle you," she said, pinning up a timeline. "I've known plenty like him, more worried about appearance than substance." Marcus nodded, sketching out floor plans. "Eleanor stood up for me. I wasn't expecting that." "That woman's got steel in her spine," Ruth chuckled, "and she sees what we all see. You're good for this project." Good for Lila, too. As if summoned by her name, Lila appeared at the door with her after-school escort. "Mr. Marcus, can I help draw the maps?" Soon she was perched on a chair beside him, carefully adding colorful labels to his sketches. When the downtown traffic noise grew loud outside, she scooted closer to him. "This is my calm place," she explained matter-of-factly to Ruth. "Mr. Marcus makes the scary noises quiet." Ruth smiled knowingly at Marcus, who felt his throat tighten with emotion. Later that afternoon, Marcus sat across from Eleanor in her office as she reviewed the final funding paperwork. The setting sun painted the room in warm gold, making the moment feel almost dreamlike. $5 million for the initial phase, Eleanor said, pen poised above the signature line, with a commitment to review additional funding based on first-year results. She signed with a flourish and smiled at Marcus across the table. Congratulations, Mr. Hale. Let's build something remarkable at Gate 23. Marcus watched her signature dry on the page, remembering Lila's words about calm places and feeling, for the first time in years, like he'd found his. The late morning sun warmed the vacant lot near Gate 23, where a crowd gathered around a makeshift stage. Construction equipment, draped with red, white, and blue bunting, formed a backdrop against the airport's distant control tower. Local news vans lined the temporary parking area, their satellite dishes reaching toward the cloudless sky. Marcus stood at the edge of the stage, watching volunteers set out folding chairs. He adjusted his tie, a new one this time, Eleanor's gift, and touched the harmonica in his pocket for reassurance. The familiar weight of it helped steady his nerves. "Mr. Marcus!" Lila's voice cut through the growing crowd noise. She ran toward him, her small yellow hard hat bobbing with each step. "Look what Mom got me." Eleanor followed at a more dignified pace, but her eyes held the same excitement as her daughter's. She wore a white hard hat that matched Lila's, though hers bore the Quinn Logistics logo. "You look very professional," Marcus told Lila, kneeling to adjust her hard hat strap. "Ready to help build something special?" Lila nodded emphatically. "Mom says I get to cut the ribbon. Will you stand with me?" "Of course he will," Eleanor said, scanning the growing crowd. "We all will." Pastor Ruth arrived with her church group, carrying homemade signs celebrating the Gate 23 Center. Airport workers Marcus knew from his porter days showed up in their uniforms, having arranged their breaks to attend. Even some of Eleanor's corporate board members mingled with the crowd, though Tobias Kern remained noticeably absent. The ceremony began with Pastor Ruth's blessing, her strong voice carrying across the lot. "Let this place become a haven," she prayed, "where kindness multiplies and hope takes root." Marcus helped Lila up the steps to the stage when it was time for the ribbon cutting. Eleanor stood on Lila's other side, one hand on her daughter's shoulder. The oversized ceremonial scissors seemed enormous in Lila's small hands. "Together," Marcus said quietly, helping Lila position the scissors. Camera flashes sparkled like stars as the red ribbon parted. The crowd erupted in cheers. Eleanor stepped to the microphone, her professional poise softened by genuine emotion. "The Gate 23 Center represents more than just a building," she began. "It represents what happens when we truly see each other, when we recognize that our community includes everyone, especially those who keep our city moving during the quiet hours." She gestured to Marcus. "This center exists because one person showed kindness to a scared little girl. Today, Quinn Logistics commits to fully funding this project, ensuring that kindness grows into something lasting and real." More applause followed. Marcus found himself pulled to the microphone, Lila still holding his hand. He spoke briefly about second chances and safe places, about how sometimes the best navigation comes from a child's crayon map. The formal ceremony gave way to a community celebration. Food trucks arrived, courtesy of Eleanor. Children played on the dirt lot where classrooms would soon rise. Marcus watched Lila show her latest safe place, drawing to a group of admirers, pointing out where everything would go. "You've done good work here," Pastor Ruth said, appearing at his side with a paper plate of barbecue. "This place will change lives." "If we can keep it going," Marcus replied, thinking of all the pieces that had to align. "Oh, it'll go," Ruth assured him. "That Quinn woman doesn't strike me as someone who gives up easily." The celebration continued into the afternoon. Local TV crews interviewed Eleanor about the project's timeline, then spoke with Marcus about his vision for veteran services. Lila photobombed several of the shots, her hard hat slightly askew, making everyone laugh. As the sun began to set, the crowd thinned. Workers dismantled the stage. Eleanor's assistant coordinated the cleanup crew, while Lila dozed in a camp chair, her hard hat cradled in her lap. In her top-floor office across town, Eleanor reviewed the day's press coverage on multiple screens. The stories were overwhelmingly positive, until a message from Tobias Kern appeared on her phone. He arrived minutes later, carrying a thin folder. "Quite a show today," he said, settling into a chair across from her desk. "The coverage was excellent," Eleanor replied. "The community response exceeded expectations." "Yes, well," Tobias opened the folder. "About that community response. There's something you should see." He slid a yellowed newspaper clipping across the desk. Eleanor recognized Marcus immediately in the grainy photo, though he looked younger. He stood with other veterans outside a medical center, holding a sign demanding better care. The headline read, "Protest leaders arrested at VA demonstration. The charges were dismissed," Eleanor said, her voice cooling. "We knew about this. But the CPS reviewer doesn't," Tobias pointed out. "And neither do our federal contract officers. The optics of a CEO whose child spends time with someone who has an arrest record, even a dismissed one, could be problematic." Eleanor's fingers began tapping the desk, a nervous habit from her early business days. The clipping seemed to mock her from its place between them. "He was protesting for health care," she said, "for veterans who served their country." "The reason doesn't matter to the media narrative," Tobias replied smoothly. "Or to competing bidders who might use this to question your judgment. The CPS situation is delicate enough already." Eleanor stared at the old photo, at Marcus's younger face filled with righteous purpose. She thought of him today, helping Lila with those oversized scissors, teaching her that brave people stand up for what's right. Her fingers continued their worried rhythm on the desk as she studied the clipping, wondering how something so old could suddenly feel so dangerous. The chandeliers of the Rosewood Hotel ballroom cast a warm glow over tables dressed in cream linens and silver centerpieces. Eleanor adjusted her simple black dress, watching Marcus navigate the crowd with remarkable grace, despite his obvious discomfort in the rented tuxedo. He'd insisted on paying for it himself, though Eleanor had offered. "The Gate 23 Center needs every dollar," he'd said firmly. Now he stood near a display of architectural renderings, explaining the center's planned veteran services to potential donors. Lila, in a navy blue party dress, hadn't left his side all evening. She clutched her harmonica keychain like a talisman against the overwhelming noise and sparkle. "Miss Quinn!" A sharp voice cut through the pleasant murmur of conversation. A woman in a red cocktail dress approached, phone already recording. "Melissa Chen from City Whispers blog. Care to comment on the rumors?" Eleanor stepped forward, positioning herself between the blogger and Lila. "This evening is about supporting our community center. We'd be happy to discuss the programs. Sources say Marcus Hale might be more than just your employee," Melissa pressed, her painted smile never wavering. "Is he Lila's biological father? Is that why you've given him such a prominent role?" The question hung in the suddenly silent air. Other phones appeared, recording. Marcus stood very still, his face a careful mask. "That's completely inappropriate," Eleanor said, her voice carrying the steel edge that had served her in countless boardrooms. "Mr. Hale is a respected community leader, and you're mean." Lila burst out, tears streaming down her face as she grabbed Marcus's hand. "He's not my daddy, but he's the only one who doesn't leave, the only one who makes it safe." Camera flashes exploded around them. Marcus tried to shield Lila with his body, while Eleanor rushed to gather her daughter. The damage was done. Already, phones throughout the ballroom buzzed with notifications as the clip began to circulate. "Time to go," Eleanor said quietly. Marcus nodded, helping clear a path through the press of people and phones. In the hotel lobby, Eleanor's assistant met them with coat-check tickets and news that their car was waiting at the side entrance. Lila's breathing had grown labored, hitching in a way that made Marcus's heart clench with recognition. "Her inhaler," he said. "It's in her evening bag." Eleanor fumbled with the small purse, hands shaking. It's not here. I must have switched bags and forgotten the spare ones in my car, Marcus said, but it's parked in the garage across. Lila's next breath came with a frightening wheeze. Eleanor scooped her up. Hospital, now. The emergency room lights were harsh after the ballroom's gentle glow. Lila sat on Eleanor's lap in the waiting room, each breath a struggle despite the oxygen mask. Her party dress looked out of place among the late-night emergencies. When they finally called Lila's name, Marcus moved to follow Eleanor through the security doors. A guard stepped forward, hand raised. Family only past this point, sir. He is family, Eleanor started to say, but another guard joined the first. Ma'am, we've seen the news alerts. Hospital policy is strict about custody situations. Marcus felt the weight of their suspicion, their assumptions. He'd faced that weight before, but never when it mattered so much. Lila reached for him, her small hand extending past the oxygen mask. Please, he said quietly, I'm listed as her emergency contact. I have the paperwork. Policy is policy, the first guard repeated. Family only. Eleanor looked torn between staying with Marcus and following the nurse who waited impatiently with a wheelchair for Lila. There was no real choice. She had to go with her daughter. I'll be right out here, Marcus called as they disappeared through the doors. Lila's frightened eyes stayed fixed on him until the doors swung shut. He sat in the waiting room for hours, watching the news alerts multiply on his phone. The clip played over and over. Lila's tearful outburst, the flash of cameras, the speculation growing with each share and comment. CPS had already called Eleanor's lawyer. The case was being elevated to an in-home evaluation. Around midnight, Eleanor texted that Lila was stabilized and sleeping. They were keeping her overnight for observation. The message ended with words that made Marcus's chest ache. I'm so sorry. About everything. He couldn't stay in the waiting room, watching those doors and remembering Lila's reaching hand. His feet carried him to his car, then through the quiet streets to the airport. The terminal was nearly empty this late, just a few delayed flights worth of passengers dozing in seats. Gate 23 stood dark and silent. Marcus sank into one of the plastic chairs, his tuxedo jacket bunching awkwardly. The harmonica was still in his pocket. He never went anywhere without it. Its familiar weight offered little comfort tonight. He lifted it to his lips, closed his eyes, and began to play. The first notes of Amazing Grace floated out across the empty gate area, soft and clear in the artificial quiet. Each verse carried a different prayer, for Lila's breathing to ease, for Eleanor's strength, for wisdom to know how to protect them both from the storm he'd helped create. The final notes faded into the terminal's hollow spaces. Marcus sat alone in the darkness, holding his father's harmonica, remembering a little girl's trust and the simple words that had started everything. Mom said, "Find a kind face." He hadn't known then how much finding that face would cost them all. The fluorescent lights of the terminal cast long shadows across Gate 23's empty seats. Marcus's harmonica rested silent in his lap, its dented surface catching the harsh glare. His tuxedo jacket lay crumpled beside him, bow tie undone and hanging loose around his neck. "I thought I'd find you here." Pastor Ruth's warm voice broke through his thoughts. She stood at the edge of the seating area, her sensible shoes and cardigan a stark contrast to his formal wear. "How'd you know?" Marcus asked, not looking up. Where else would a man go when his heart's this heavy? Ruth settled into the seat next to him, her movements unhurried. "Besides, I helped arrange your first job here. I remember how you'd come early just to watch the sunrise through these windows." Marcus traced the harmonica's worn edges with his thumb. "Maybe I should go back to just watching sunrises. Seems I've caused enough trouble trying to do more." "Marcus Hale." Ruth's tone sharpened. "Don't you dare disappear on that little girl and her mother when they need you most." "Need me?" He gave a bitter laugh. "I'm the reason CPS is breathing down Eleanor's neck. The reason people are questioning Lila's parentage. The reason that child feels safe for the first time in years," Ruth cut in. The reason Eleanor's finally learning to trust someone besides herself. She paused, studying his face. You know what your problem is? You're so afraid of causing pain that you'd rather walk away than stand and fight. I did fight. 10 years ago at that protest. Look where that got me. Then tell people what really happened. Ruth's voice gentled. Tell them about the veteran you were trying to help, about the charges being dropped, about how you chose peace even when others pushed for violence. Marcus sat up straighter. The truth won't matter to people who've already decided what to believe. Maybe not. But it'll matter to Lila, to Eleanor, to every person who comes to that community center wondering if they deserve a second chance. Ruth reached over and squeezed his hand. The truth we choose to tell shapes the mercy we're able to receive. The terminal's air conditioning hummed in the silence that followed. Marcus watched a cleaning crew move methodically through the opposite gate, their actions mechanical but purposeful. I need to make some calls, he said finally. Ruth smiled. I already talked to Reverend Jackson. The church steps are yours whenever you're ready. Across town, Eleanor paced her home office, phone pressed to her ear. I don't care about the optics, Tobias. I care about who leaked that rumor to the press. Eleanor, be reasonable. Tobias's smooth voice oozed concern. We're trying to protect you. These questions were bound to come up eventually. Better to address them now before what? Eleanor stopped pacing. Before the board meeting tomorrow? Before the federal contract review? A telling pause. I'm simply saying that perhaps this is an opportunity to distance yourself from complications. Complications? The word tasted bitter. Is that what you call a man who's shown more genuine care for my daughter in 2 months than your entire PR team has shown in 2 years? A man with a record, Tobias reminded her. A man whose presence raises questions about your judgment. My judgment? Eleanor's laugh held no humor. You mean like my judgment in trusting a COO who'd leak personal rumors about a 6-year-old girl to protect his profit margins? Another pause. Longer this time. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything, Tobias. I'm stating facts. Only 3 people knew about Marcus's arrest record. Me, you, and the private investigator you hired. Eleanor's voice turned cold. And I certainly didn't tell that blogger. Eleanor. She ended the call, hands shaking with anger. The house felt too quiet without Lila, still under observation at the hospital with her nanny staying overnight. Eleanor sank into her desk chair, staring at the framed photo from the center's groundbreaking, Marcus helping Lila cut the ribbon, both of them laughing. Her phone buzzed. Marcus's name appeared on the screen. Eleanor? His voice sounded steadier than it had at the hospital. I need to tell you something. She pressed her fingers to her temples. Marcus, if this is goodbye, it's not. But you might not like what I'm about to do. What does that mean? I'm holding a press conference tomorrow morning, going to tell the whole story. The protest, the job loss, everything. He took a breath. People need to hear the truth from me, not through rumors and speculation. Eleanor closed her eyes. The board meeting is tomorrow morning. I know. That's partly why it needs to be then. His voice softened. How's Lila? Breathing better. They're keeping her one more night to be safe. Eleanor touched the photo on her desk. She asked for you. Tell her I'll play Amazing Grace for her soon. Marcus paused. Eleanor, I know this might make things harder for you professionally. Do it. She interrupted. Tell your truth. It's the right thing. The line went quiet except for their breathing. Thank you, he said finally. For what? For showing me that doing the right thing matters more than looking right to others. Eleanor thought of Tobias's smooth lies, of boardroom politics and carefully managed images. Maybe we both needed that lesson. I should go. Pastor Ruth's helping me prepare my statement. Marcus hesitated. Eleanor? Yes? Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm not leaving. Not unless you and Lila tell me to go. The simple promise brought unexpected tears to Eleanor's eyes. Then I guess you'll be staying. She managed. After they hung up, Eleanor sat in her quiet office, looking at the photo of shared joy at Gate 23. Tomorrow would bring its own storms, but tonight she felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the pure relief of choosing truth over appearance, substance over shadows. She reached for her laptop. She had her own statement to prepare for the board. Morning sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of Pastor Ruth's church, casting rainbow patterns across the worn wooden steps where Marcus stood. His pressed shirt and tie felt stiff against his throat as he faced the growing crowd of reporters and community members. Camera flashes popped like lightning, microphones thrust forward like accusing fingers. Marcus gripped the small podium someone had placed at the top of the steps, his father's harmonica a reassuring weight in his pocket. Pastor Ruth stood quietly to his left, her presence steady as a lighthouse. She gave him a small nod, and he cleared his throat. 10 years ago, Marcus began, his voice carrying across the murmuring crowd, I stood at another set of steps. Those were courthouse steps, and I was there trying to help a fellow veteran who'd been denied his benefits. He paused, letting the memory settle. Things got heated that day. People were angry. Someone pushed, then someone else pushed back. When the police came, I was one of the ones they arrested. More cameras flashed. Marcus saw reporters scribbling furiously in their notepads. The charges were dropped. He continued, because the truth was, I'd been trying to keep the peace, to protect both the officers and the protesters. That's what I learned in the Army. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand between anger and more anger, holding steady until cooler heads prevail. He pulled out his harmonica, holding it up so it caught the morning light. This was my father's. He taught me that music can calm troubled hearts. That's why I played it for Lila Quinn that day at Gate 23. Not because I wanted attention or reward, but because I saw a scared little girl who needed something steady to hold on to. The crowd had grown quieter now, hanging on his words. Marcus's voice strengthened. There are rumors going around about me and Lila, about why I helped her, about what I might want from her family. He shook his head slowly. So let me be clear, I am not Lila's biological father. I'm simply someone who recognized a child in need of safety, the way others once recognized that need in me. A reporter called out, What about your relationship with Eleanor Quinn? Ms. Quinn gave me something I'd lost hope of finding, a chance to work with dignity again, to build something that might help other struggling parents and veterans. Marcus's eyes scanned the crowd. The Gate 23 Center isn't about me or Ms. Quinn. It's about creating a safe place for people who need one, about showing that kindness isn't weakness and that asking for help isn't shame. A movement at the back of the crowd caught his attention. Eleanor was making her way forward, dressed simply in a blue blazer and slacks. Her face held none of its usual careful control. Instead, there was something raw and determined in her expression. The reporters noticed her too, swiveling their cameras and microphones. But Eleanor didn't stop at the edge of the steps. She climbed them steadily until she stood beside Marcus at the podium. I'd like to speak if I may, she said, her voice clear despite the tremor Marcus could see in her hands. He stepped aside, giving her room. The crowd fell completely silent. I've spent years building a company, Eleanor began, making sure every detail was perfect, every system efficient. I applied that same approach to motherhood, scheduling, organizing, trying to control every variable. She took a deep breath. What I didn't realize was how much I'd started treating my daughter like another project to manage instead of a little girl who needed her mother present, not just perfect. Marcus watched her grip the podium tighter. When Lila got lost at the airport, it wasn't because of poor planning. It was because I was on a business call instead of holding her hand. When she ran to Marcus that day at the gala, it wasn't because of any inappropriate relationship. It was because he's shown her something I forgot to give her, consistent, unhurried attention. Eleanor turned slightly, meeting Marcus's eyes for a moment before facing the crowd again. I welcome CPS's review of my parenting. I invite their oversight of the Gate 23 Center's childcare programs. Because the truth is, we all need help sometimes. We all need someone to show us a better way." Her voice strengthened. "Marcus Hale showed me that. Not through grand gestures, but through small moments of grace. Playing music for a scared child, saying grace before meals, treating everyone he meets with the same quiet dignity." The morning sun had climbed higher now, warming the church steps. Marcus could see familiar faces appearing in the crowd, airport workers he'd helped over the years, veterans who remembered him from support groups, parents from Lila's school. They moved forward slowly, gathering closer to the steps. "The Gate 23 Center will continue," Eleanor declared, "not as a corporate project, but as a true community effort. And Marcus Hale will continue as its director, with my full support and trust." She stepped back from the podium, standing shoulder to shoulder with Marcus. Pastor Ruth moved to join them, her face glowing with quiet pride. The reporters began calling out questions, but their voices were gradually drowned out by something else, the sound of applause. It started slowly, scattered, but built like a wave. Marcus saw airport janitors clapping next to business executives, church ladies beside teenage baggage handlers, all united in this moment of choosing truth over suspicion, community over division. Standing there on the sun-warmed steps, Marcus felt the weight of secrets and shadows lifting. He reached into his pocket and touched his father's harmonica, remembering all the times its music had helped him find his way home. Now, somehow, it had helped him build a new kind of home, one big enough to shelter not just himself, but all the other lost and searching souls who needed a kind face and a safe place to land. Eleanor's shoulder brushed against his, steady and present. Together, they faced the growing crowd of supporters, neither running nor hiding, but standing firm in the morning light. The afternoon sun warmed the church plaza as people continued to gather. What had started as a press conference had transformed into something closer to a community testimony meeting. Folding chairs appeared from the church basement, creating informal rows where elderly church ladies sat beside men in airport uniforms and business suits. Marcus stood near the steps, overwhelmed by the steady stream of familiar faces emerging from the crowd. Eleanor remained close by, her professional demeanor softening as she listened to story after story. Tom Wheeler, a mechanic from the airport's maintenance crew, stepped forward first. "2 winters ago my car broke down during the night shift," he said, his voice carrying across the plaza. "Marcus stayed 3 hours after his shift, in freezing rain, to help me fix it. Wouldn't take a dime for it either." A woman in a teacher's cardigan raised her hand next. "My son was struggling in school," she shared. "Marcus tutored him in math every Tuesday at the airport food court during his break, just because he saw him crying over homework one day." The stories kept coming. An elderly veteran described how Marcus had helped him navigate the VA benefits system. A young mother told how he'd watched her toddler while she ran to get medicine during a flight delay. Each account painted a picture of quiet, consistent kindness, the kind that asks nothing in return. Near the back of the crowd, a woman in hospital scrubs stood up. Marcus recognized her immediately, the nurse from Lila's ER visit. She made her way forward, her steps determined. "I need to say something," she announced, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm the nurse who turned Mr. Hale away from Lila's hospital room that night." She turned to face Marcus directly. "I let rumors and prejudice cloud my judgment. I saw a black man trying to visit a white child, saw the headlines, and made assumptions I'm ashamed of now." The plaza fell silent. Eleanor stepped closer to Marcus, her shoulder brushing his in silent support. "I've worked in pediatrics for 20 years, the nurse continued. "I should know better than anyone that family isn't just about blood. I'm sorry, Mr. Hale. I was wrong. And I'd like to volunteer at the Gate 23 Center, if you'll have me." Marcus stepped forward and extended his hand to her. "There's always room for more kind faces," he said quietly. A commotion at the edge of the plaza drew everyone's attention. A woman in a crisp suit was making her way through the crowd, a folder tucked under her arm. The CPS caseworker. Eleanor straightened, but Marcus noticed she didn't step away from him. The caseworker reached them and smiled. Actually smiled. "Ms. Quinn, Mr. Hale," she greeted them. "I'm here to officially inform you that our review is concluded. The case is being marked as unfounded." She opened her folder. "In fact, I'd like to commend the proactive steps you've taken, Ms. Quinn. The new nanny vetting policies, the backup guardianship protocols involving community liaisons. These are models we'd like to share with other working parents." Eleanor released a breath she seemed to have been holding for weeks. "Thank you," she said softly. The caseworker wasn't finished. "And the Gate 23 Center's proposed childcare program? With proper licensing, it could fill a crucial gap for airport employees working irregular hours. We'd be happy to consult on the setup." As the caseworker spoke with Eleanor about details, Marcus noticed Pastor Ruth approaching with his phone. "Call from Eleanor's office," she whispered. Marcus stepped aside to take it. The news was brief but significant. Tobias Kern had submitted his resignation, effective immediately. No public statement, no drama, just a quiet exit. When he returned to the plaza, he found Leela had arrived with her after-school sitter. She ran straight to him, wrapping her arms around his legs. "Did you fix it?" she asked, looking up at him. "Did you make it safe again?" Marcus knelt down to her level. "I think we all did, sweetheart. Together." The crowd had begun to disperse, the afternoon light growing softer. Eleanor gathered her things, then reached for Lila's hand. "Time to head home," she said. They walked toward the parking lot together, Lila between them. Without prompting, she reached up and took Marcus's hand too, swinging between them as they walked. Marcus felt the weight of both their hands, Lila's small fingers wrapped trustingly in his, Eleanor's brush of knuckles against his palm as they both held their little girl steady. In that moment, he understood that sometimes the biggest changes come not in dramatic declarations, but in simple steps taken together. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Gate 23 Center, casting warm rectangles of light across the freshly polished floors. Marcus stood in the lobby, adjusting his tie and taking in the space that had transformed from dream to reality in just 2 whirlwind weeks. The walls, painted in soft blues and greens, and were covered with children's artwork, dozens of hand-drawn maps showing safe places throughout the city. Gate 23 featured prominently in many of them, along with the church, schools, and parks. Lila's original drawing held a place of honor near the entrance. "Ready for the grand tour?" Eleanor appeared beside him, dressed in a simple blazer and slacks rather than her usual corporate attire. Her smile was relaxed, something he'd noticed more often lately. Before Marcus could answer, Lila darted past them, her Mary Janes clicking on the floor. "Can I show them my room first?" she asked, bouncing on her toes. The childcare wing had become her special project, with Eleanor letting her help choose everything from the paint colors to the stuffed animals. "Of course, sweetheart," Marcus said. "Lead the way." The small group of community leaders, donors, and airport officials followed Lila down the sunny hallway. She pointed out features with the authority of a tiny real estate agent. "This is where kids can read while their parents work late shifts. And look, we have special cubbies for their special things." Marcus watched the visitors' faces soften as Lila guided them through the space. Even the most skeptical board member couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. The tour continued through the job training classrooms, where computers lined the walls and a schedule of free courses was already posted. They passed the Veterans Resource Center, where comfortable chairs and private meeting spaces promised dignity and support. In the coffee shop area, 2 former airport porters were training as baristas. "The idea," Marcus explained, "is to create more than just services. We're building connections. When a single parent drops off their child for evening care, they might meet a veteran who can fix their car. When someone comes in for job training, they might end up mentoring someone else." Eleanor stepped forward. And every person who works or volunteers here understands our core principle." She gestured to the words painted above the main desk. "Find a kind face." They reached the final stop, a wall near the entrance where a small cloth-covered plaque waited. Lila tugged at Marcus's sleeve, and he lifted her up so she could reach the covering. "Ready?" she whispered. At Marcus's nod, she pulled the cloth away. The simple bronze plaque read, "For the kind face, where safety begins." Below was an engraving of Gate 23's familiar archway. A quiet murmur of appreciation went through the group. Marcus felt Eleanor's hand brush his arm, a gesture that had become familiar over these weeks of building something bigger than themselves. After the tour concluded and the visitors dispersed, Marcus found himself in his new office, still bare except for his father's harmonica on the desk and a child's drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands. Eleanor appeared in his doorway. "The board meeting went well," she said. "I'm officially back as CEO, though I'll be spending Thursdays and Fridays here at the center." She paused. "It feels right, doesn't it, this balance?" Marcus nodded. "It does." "Mom, Marcus," Lila called from the hallway. "Pastor Ruth says it's time for potluck." They drove separately to the church fellowship hall, where Sunday afternoon sunlight slanted through old stained glass windows. The long tables were already crowded with dishes: Pastor Ruth's famous chicken, Mrs. Johnson's mac and cheese, and Eleanor's somewhat lopsided but earnestly made casseroles in borrowed Pyrex dishes. Marcus watched as Eleanor helped Lila fill her plate, noting how naturally she now moved in this setting, so different from her corporate boardrooms. She'd let her hair down today, both literally and figuratively. After the blessing, Pastor Ruth caught Marcus's eye and nodded toward his pocket where she knew he kept his harmonica. He pulled it out, the metal warm and familiar in his hands. The first notes of Amazing Grace floated through the fellowship hall, conversations quieted. Then, clear and sweet, Lila's voice joined in, humming the melody she'd learned that first day at Gate 23. Eleanor closed her eyes, swaying slightly to the music that had brought them together. Around them, other voices joined in, some singing, some humming, creating a gentle harmony that filled the space with something more than just music. Marcus looked at Eleanor and Lila across the table, saw their quiet smiles reflecting his own, and felt the simple truth of what they'd built together. A family chosen by trust, strengthened by trial, and blessed by grace. Through the windows, the late afternoon sun painted everything in soft gold, while the sounds of shared laughter and clinking plates filled the air with the comfortable music of community. At their table, Lila drew another map on her paper napkin, carefully labeling all the places that meant safe to her now. Gate 23, the new center, Pastor Ruth's church, and most importantly, the people who had become her anchors. If you enjoyed the story, I handpicked this next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.